Tamarindo. Okay, so you good?
I'll be
Con
good.
confianza.
I'll be good. We got this.
Good morning, buenos días. Welcome to Southwestern Community College.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Buenos días. Awesome. It's such an honor to be here, right? I am Dr. Gerardo Rios. I teach Mexican American Studies here and Chicana history. Proud to have been the first ever full-time hire in that discipline, and not the first and not the last, right? So, looking forward to continuing that legacy. I'm just so honored to be here. I used to be a professional athlete. I used to be a bodyguard as well. And I have met many famous people in my life, and when I shook Dolores Huerta's hand, I was starstruck for the first time in my life. I felt something that I cannot describe, and I think that speaks largely of her legacy for the Mexican people, the legacy for oppressed people, not only nationally, but across the board, across the world as well. She is an emblem of civil rights, not only locally, not only at our state level, but also nationally. And it is so vital to remember our history, to remember our roots. And I liken Dolores Huerta to a warrior. I liken Dolores Huerta to the Maya and to the Aztec mothers who presented their children upon shields of battle. I liken Dolores Huerta to Emiliano Zapata and the many Zapatista female followers whom he led, right? And I liken Dolores Huerta to my grandmother, who was born in San Mateo, California, and struggled working in the fields in the 1940s and in the 1950s, in those great eras of injustice. And Dolores Huerta is one of those guerreras incansables, one of those tireless warriors who put her neck on the line, who put her life on the line to create meaningful change, not only for her generation, but for posterity, for generations to come. So I am so glad that all of you are here, and I hope that everyone is as honored as we are. Thank you very much. And
Welcome again. My name is Doctora Guadalupe Rodriguez Corona. I'm the Director of the Office of Student Equity and co-advisor to Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán at Southwestern Community College. Where are my mechistas? We are so honored to host a person that for many of us, for me including, being a student at San Diego State, had the wonderful opportunity to host her and bring her to our community. And she's touched many of us to continue this work, and I'm one of those legacies, that as a student, I was touched by her message, as a mujer, as a Chicana, as a student activist, and that our work is continuous. It's a lifelong journey of creating change and social action. So I'm glad that I'm able to support our students here at Southwestern, to be a mentor and be in the trenches with them, mano a mano, hand to hand, next to each other, creating spaces of learning and creating spaces for our students to thrive and to be successful at Southwestern College. This work cannot be done just by the students. They are actually the ones who led this effort. And at the center of the work, there's a lot of supporters on this campus that support the work of our students. So I think it's important to acknowledge Dr. Tina King in the back, who will be leaving us soon. Thank you, Dr. King. Dean Rachel Fisher, who works with our student leaders, Dean Fisher. Erica Deshawn and the facilities team. Facilities team from the Performing Arts Center and their staff, they're amazing. They let us use the space to celebrate Dolores today. And most importantly, as mentioned, this is a student program, student-led and student organized. So I want to make sure that I recognize Ms. Sonia Camargo, our president. Sonia, come on, Sonia. Her executive team, that has worked numerous hours along with her, Janet Sousa, Jaime Rosas, and an alumni just drove down to help us today. Julia walked too. Julia, thank you. As I mentioned, every Mecha event starts with the clap of our gente. So let me describe what that is. The clap is the heartbeat of our gente. People wake up every morning with the rising sun to provide us with vegetables and fruits to keep us nourished and in good health. We will begin with soft claps that will increase and end with one clap. Let's do a practice. So we'll do one more con más ganas. Ready? ¡Que viva la mujer! ¡Que viva los campesinos! ¡Que viva Dolores Huerta! And at this point, we'd like to invite Dr. Francisco Fuentes, who will be addressing our 10-point plan at Southwestern College. Bienvenido.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Francisco Fuentes, and I am a product of the South Bay. I didn't know it then, but people like Dolores Huerta was instrumental in inspiring young adults to go to college in the 1960s and 70s, and even today, and inspired to establish groups like Mecha on many college campuses. In 1969, Chicano students from across the country got together to develop the Plan de Santa Barbara. As part of this plan to promote college success for Latinos, Mecha was established. Mecha was created to complement the newly created Chicano Studies departments across universities and colleges. 2 years ago, student leaders got together to start Mecha again. During one such meeting, a Mecha member, I kind of skipped a part here. Give me a second. So 53 years ago, talking about the plan, 53 years have passed, and the Mecha is still here. Why? Because the goals of the plan have not been actualized. Southwestern College remains without a Department of Chicano Studies or a full-time faculty trained in the discipline. While the community remains largely influenced by Mexican and Chicano culture, the college has been unable to shed its white skin when it comes to its curricular and organizational priorities. 2 years ago, student leaders got together to form Mecha 2.0. During one such meeting, a Mecha member shared an assignment she submitted at Grossmont College. Like the Black Panthers, the Brown Berets, and other community organizers, Miriam, the student, was tasked by her professor with developing a 10-point plan that addressed important issues in her community. She presented her assignment to Mecha leaders. Her plan addressed the issues surrounding Mexican American Studies majors at Southwestern, like her, who found it almost impossible to complete their associate's degree at Southwestern College. You see, the classes she needed for her AA degree were not routinely offered at Southwestern College. Remember, there's no department or full-time faculty that exists here. So instead of changing majors, like perhaps so many students do, she enrolled at Grossmont to complete her degree requirements at Southwestern. As a single mother living in Mexico, she discovered even more barriers than other majors at Southwestern. This is not what equity looks like. Despite the college's lack of course offerings, Miriam was able to graduate Southwestern College with an AA in Mexican American Studies and transfer to SDSU. Her class assignment ultimately turned into Mecha's Plan de Southwestern. The plan is a roadmap for equity and anti-racism. The plan calls on the college to catch up with history, starting with the establishment of a Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies. This includes 4 full-time professors trained in the discipline of Chicana and Chicano Studies and proficient in borderlands culture, bilingual as well. As the largest community college in San Diego, beautiful to see a lot of support for students. As the largest community college in San Diego, we are depriving students of their cultural and intellectual inheritance. For example, there are community members like me who hold PhDs or masters in Chicano studies, but cannot teach or are given restrictions by the college because no department yet exists. Mecha believes students' cultural identity and history are not priorities for the college. Students are demanding accountability. The college has received multi-million-dollar grants to serve Latino students, but receiving these funds is not enough. Mecha asks for student involvement in grant applications in order to give input and ensure efficacy. They ask for the college foundation to multiply their efforts for funding scholarships. They call on administration to prioritize childcare and mentorship programs, not just to serve Latinos, but other minoritized populations as well. To become anti-racist, Mecha calls on administrators to create a funding source for cultural activities that center the Latino experience, such as Día de los Muertos, Posadas, El Grito, Día del Niño, Bring Your Familia to Campus, and more. Let me remind you, the campus was never built for student success. Over the last 50 years, it is white households who've benefited the most from the college. Similar success for Latino households and other minoritized populations in our community is 50 years overdue. What worked the last 50 years will not work the next 50 years. It's time for an upgrade in our operating system. Despite the college's there is still a long road ahead for Mecha to make the college more receptive to serving non-white students. Thus, Mecha also proposes a student multicultural resource center that reflects the community's priorities, interests, and creativity in anti-racism and community organizing. Charging in-state tuition for students living across the border in Mexico is the 9th point in Mecha's Plan de Southwestern, a point that our superintendent and president of this college proudly is trying to achieve as well. Finally, Mecha wants more bilingual counselors and seeks broad institutional support, which includes funding for a bilingual, cross-cultural graduation ceremony for Latino Chicano families. Even though the college has not actually officially shown support for the plan, students are hosting their first ever Raza graduation 21 days from today. They've taken a cue from big tech companies. You don't ask for permission, you ask for forgiveness later, right? Mecha will not stop, cannot stop, until the full plan is adopted by the governing board and incorporated by college administrators. Ultimately, changing the way the college runs itself to reflect a new century of learners. It has been 53 years since the original plan was first published. If not for the students of Mecha, perhaps the college would remain unaffected, unchanged for another 50 years. The time to act is now. Now is the time we can all reimagine the college that reflects not just the demographics, but also the priorities of the community at large. Students want Chicano Studies Department, and they want it now. It is the hope and vision of these students today that you, and you, and you, and you too, will join them in their quest to fight the legacy of institutional racism that plagues colleges all throughout the state. You can do this by pledging your support to the 10-point plan. After this event, please read their plan and sign their petition at www.plandesouthwestern.com. Muchas gracias por su apoyo. Adelante, hoy y para siempre. Now I would like to introduce another born and raised, proud product of the South Bay, our Superintendent and President, Mark Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Southwestern College. Is that all we get? Yeah, good afternoon. It's great to be here with you all. I'd like to start off by acknowledging our ASO president and the Associated Student Leadership, Sonia Carmago, who is really the students who advocated for bringing Dolores here today. So it was really out of their efforts and their work. So thank you to Sonia and the ASO. I'd also like to start off by acknowledging our board, our governing board of trustees that are present today. Leticia Casares is with us. We have Trustee Don Dumas with us. And I thought I saw Trustee Griselda Delgado somewhere nearby, but in any case, we'll see you. I thought I saw you. So, today is a critical juncture of bringing Dolores Huerta here in terms of what we're seeing in society. We're seeing a racial reckoning. We're seeing tensions at the U.S.-Mexico border with many immigrant groups halted there, from the Haitian immigrant groups to the Ukrainian immigrant groups to, of course, those from Latin America. And what that really represents is really a group of people who are seeking opportunity. And essentially, that's what Dolores Huerta's movement represents. And there's a long history of unity in that work. I know because I had the opportunity to live in the Central Valley, Fresno, California, and Salinas, California. So I've had the opportunity to visit many times the 40 acres in Delano, California, which is really where the work began with Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Larry Itleong, and it was really bringing those communities together with the goal of trying to improve the working conditions in the fields. But I've always said in visiting those locations is that it was more than farm worker and advocating for farm worker rights, which it definitely was. But I think it was also bigger than that. I think it was about improving the human condition and the basic rights and tenets of people to be able to live a dignified life and to be able to work in dignified conditions. And the unity component of that also comes with the fact that that movement could not have been successful without the Filipino American workers that were in Delano and in the Central Valley at that time. Yes. And the unity work expands if you're aware of the history. In 1970, Cesar Chavez was jailed in Salinas, California because of the grape boycott. Does anyone know who one of his primary visitors was early in his jail sentence? Coretta Scott King, yes. She visited Cesar Chavez and she had a message for him that the struggle of the farm workers is also the struggle of Black Americans. Their struggle is our struggle and our struggle is their struggle. And so united we must be in fighting for improving the human conditions in the United States of America. After Coretta Scott King visited Cesar Chavez, she went on to speak to 3,000 farm workers with that very same message. I've also had the opportunity to visit Keene, California, which is just outside of Bakersfield, where the Cesar Chavez Museum is. It's a very tranquil place, a very spiritual place. And so again, we couldn't be more timely in terms of having Dolores Huerta in our community, on our campus, talking about unity and improving the conditions of our communities of color and our disenfranchised communities throughout this country. We have it today. A recent inclusive economy report by the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation just published a report which talks about 50% of the jobs by 2030. They're going to require some type of degree, credential, or certificate, more education than the high school level. Conversely, when we look at some of the data for the high schools in our service area, we see percentages, and these are self-reported data from our high schools. We see in some of our feeder high schools in South County that 30% of our students don't go anywhere after high school. Can you see the disconnect where the jobs of the future are and where education is systematically not preparing our communities of color for those jobs, which are also going to allow our community to be able to live in this very expensive region? So we must be intentional in our work, and we must be intentional around lifting up our communities of color who have systematically been disenfranchised from resources, from access to opportunities, and from belief that they can do it and they can be successful. And so having Dolores Huerta here with that message today is timely, and I think it also represents our own student leader, Sonia Camargo, our leader of the future, our associated student president. She says she's going to take my job as the superintendent president at Southwestern College, so I told her to hurry up so I can retire. So no, it really is about investing in our future, investing in our leaders. They are tomorrow's workforce, and they are going to bring the change and the unity that's needed in our communities, bringing everyone together with one mission, improving our conditions in our community. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Associated Student President, Sonia Camargo.
Hello, everybody. For those of you who know me, you know I'm very, very nervous right now. So I wanted to bring her here in all honesty because they told me that I couldn't. You know, for me, people tell me I can't do it, and I go out and do it, and I do it, you know, and I prove everybody wrong. For those of you who do know me, I come from the gutter, you know, and I'm coming up out of it. I want my daughter to know her history, and that's where the 10-point plan and Dolores Huerta comes in. So, Dolores Huerta, everybody.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. So, thank you very much for inviting me to share this afternoon with you. And I want to thank all of the wonderful speakers. Weren't they awesome? Oh my God, let's give them a big applause, everybody. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Sanchez, for introducing me, and Sonia Camargo, also. Dr. Corona, let's give her an applause also, please, all right? And that was a wonderful history from Dr. Fuentes. Wasn't that awesome, talking about the history of Chicano studies? Okay, another applause for him, please. So I think I want to start with taking off of what Dr. Fuentes was talking about how important community college is. I am a graduate of community college, and I always like to say to students, you know, when you're in high school and you're able to go to community college, and what a wonderful experience that is. And I know that many students, sometimes it's kind of hard to go up into the upper education. And so I always like to tell students, remember that song, El Rey? You know that song, El Rey? It says, no hay que llegar primero, pero hay que saber llegar, right? And sometimes life gets in the way. I myself got married, and then I had a couple of children, got a divorce, my first one. Okay, there were more. And then I decided to go back to school, and by that time I was like 25 years old. And when I went back to community college, and in my classes I found out, hey, I was getting better grades than some of the people that were in there that were teachers, right? So then I decided to continue my education, but it was just really great. And so that's why it's important for people to know whatever our goals are, that we stick to them. And again, when life gets in the way, always remember to come back and continue your education, because we need so many more of you in the doctorate programs, because we want you to be teachers at the universities, all right? That's where we need you. And we know that even in terms of education, in the whole United States of America, only 2%, pick up on this, only 2% of the teachers in the United States are bilingual. And at the same time, we know that our country is getting browner, but we don't have the teachers there to teach the students where they need them. And we know that education is so critical because a lot of the things that Dr. Sanchez was talking about getting rid of the racism and having a society that is more equitable, that we're not going to be able to get there unless we have education. All of the things that we see right now, they talk about these culture wars. What does that mean? That's a war against people of color, a war against gay people, a war against women and the reproductive rights of women. We know what just happened with the Supreme Court. And so, you know what? I'm saying to them, you want to have a war with us? Okay, take us on, okay? We're ready. We are ready. And we're going to win those wars, but we're not going to win unless all of us decide and commit that we're going to join in the struggle. We just can't be bystanders and see that all this stuff is going on. We've actually got to engage. We've got to engage. I mentioned education, okay? How do we get rid of racism? Well, there's one easy way. If we can have in our educational system, starting from first grade and second grade, the truth about who we are. We are Homo sapiens. This is our scientific name of the human race. Where did our human race begin? Does somebody know? Can somebody shout it out? Africa. What does that mean? That means that we are all Africans of different shades and colors, okay? And so we can say to all those neo-Nazis out there, the white supremacists, get over it, you're Africans, okay? Ya tiempo, get over it, okay? And if we can remember that we are all related, and had we not taken care of each other when Homo sapiens first appeared on this planet, we had to protect each other, we had to share whatever we had with each other. If not, we would not have survived, because we were the weakest of the mammals, The other bigger mammals, they could have had us for lunch, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact that we all stayed together and protected each other, that's how we survived. So I would like to ask you, take the hand of the person next to you. Turn to that person on the right and say, hello, relative. Now turn to the person on the left and do the same. Say hello, relative. Yeah, let's remember that. Let's remember this moment just to remind all of us that we are all related, and that I think the pandemic taught us that, right? That we have to take care of each other, and that's the only way that we can survive as a human race on this planet. So if we can get our educational system to start teaching that. And I know we have a lot of Latinos, we're probably primarily Latino here, but we have that issue in our own community. We have been colonized about this issue of white supremacy. And in our families, how often do they say, the baby is born, ay, qué bonito el niño, está bien güerito. Don't we say that? Yeah, we got to change that. We can't say that baby is beautiful because it's light skinned. We can say, qué bonita la niña, es bien prieta. How beautiful that child is. That child has dark skin, high cheekbones, an Aztec nose, or a Chato nose. You know what I mean? So this is what we have to start doing just personally in our own families, in our own communities, to start celebrating our indigenous side of who we are. Because we were all mezcladas, so we're all mixed, okay? So, but we have to celebrate the indigenous side. And when we think of the indigenous side of our heritage, these are the people that knew how to take care of the earth, right? These are the people who knew how to share. And we can think of the way our indigenous ancestors lived. It was much more, you might say, compatible with earth than the way that we live today. Let's just remember that and celebrate our indigenous side of our culture. And Los Indios, yeah. And we know that was also a name that they gave us, no? I don't know what our original name is. Somebody has to invent that name, all right? So we can get rid of Hispanic. Although I know a lot of us, and and I would like to say, and probably many of you have already done this, but when we Google a map of the United States of America before 1848, what do we see? That a third of the United States was Mexico. So when they tell us Mexican Americans, go back where you came from, we say, hey, we were here before the United States was the United States, right? We were here before that. And so all of the North American continent, the South American continent, whose land is it? It belongs to the indigenous people, right, of the both continents, okay? And, when they, and I know that, we have to remind people, the first immigrants that came here were the Europeans, like my great-grandmother who came from Spain on one side of the family. I even have a great-grandfather that came from England. But he was in the Civil War on the Union side, so he's okay. But then we have to tell people that. And then when they talk about these people that are on the border trying to get asylum in the United States, the people from El Salvador, Guatemala, these other places, and we look at them as foreigners. And again, we have to say, hey, this was their land also. And why do they come here to seek asylum? Because of poverty, because of violence. Well, the United States, we were part of creating that violence. When they had the wars there in Central America, we went in there and tore up the country, and we never went back to repair it, right? We never went back to repair it. And I like to use the word bananas. You say, why the word bananas? Because how many bananas do we eat every single day in the United States of America? Does the money that we eat go to the people in Guatemala or El Salvador or Honduras? No. The money that we spend on bananas, it goes to Chiquita Banana and Dole Banana and the 50 banana companies. It does not go to the people in Central America. If the money that we spend on bananas would go to those people there wouldn't be any poverty. There wouldn't be any poverty. So these are the kind of things that we have to think about. And when we meet with our Congress people, tell them, okay, what are we going to do about this? What can we do about stopping the exploitation of these corporations, of not only the people there in Central America, but exploiting all of us also, okay? So exploiting all of us also. And when we think about why do we not have free college education for everybody, free university education, I mean, they have it in Europe, they have it in parts of Latin America, they have it in Cuba, which is a little teeny country which has an economic boycott by the United States of America, but every person in Cuba has a free college education. Not only that, but they have free health care in Cuba. Has anybody here ever been to Cuba? One person. You're affirming what I'm saying, right? So, oh good, another person over here. Yeah, so if we, the richest country in the United States, cannot do this, then we have to ask questions. Well, we know that one of the answers for that is that 90% of the wealth in the United States is in the hands of 10% of the wealthy families and corporations, okay? Including Walmart, the Walton family that owns Walmart. By the way, I say to my friends do not let their friends shop at Walmart. Because they're anti-union, anti-immigrant, and again, they do not give their workers what they should, don't let them unionize, etc. So, these are some of the things that are really within our control as voters that we can change. I'm going to go back to education for a second because, again, we don't teach economics in our school systems. I mentioned before that we have to do something about the racism. Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, that racism is a sickness. And it's something that we can get rid of. And so we have to not only do the healing that we have to do, but we also have to do the education, as I talked about before, so that little children, we know they're not born racist, they're made that way by their culture that they have. And not only that, but right now, we know what's in the news right now about the Supreme Court voting to get rid of abortion for women. Now, this is an issue that we really have to take head on again in our community, okay? I am the Catholic mother of 11 children. My daughter Juanita, former teacher, she likes dogs and cats instead, okay? I respect my daughter's decision to have dogs and cats. And we know that for women to know that they can control their own bodies, if you can't control your own body, you can't control your life. You know, you can't control your career. And in our community, a lot of people are very confused about that issue, you know, because we have been told if you have an abortion, you're going to go to hell, right? You know? But think about this, okay? We have a lot of our people in our community, maybe people right here in our audience, that they vote for candidates that are running on the issue of abortion and on the issue of gay marriage. So I'm going to give you some words to share with all those people out there that are confused about the issue. I call it confused. Okay? And I'm going to give you words I think that we can use to help people understand this issue. And I'm going to quote the famous Mexican president, I'm sure most of us have heard of him, Benito Juárez. What did Benito Juárez say? El respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz, okay? Respecting other people's rights is peace. If I want to have 11 kids, as I did, and my daughter wants to have her dogs and cats instead, that is her human right, okay? Her human right. If someone falls in love with, lives with, or marries a person who is their own sex, that is their human right. And none of us have the authority to be able to tell somebody else what to do with their life. So that's really important that people understand that, because we have many of our Latino population that are voting for candidates on the issue of abortion or on the issue of gay marriage. You know, this is, like I mentioned, the cultural wars, that's what they're using to divide us. So we've got to say to our folks here, no, we've got to vote for health care. We've got to vote for more money for education. You know, these are the things that we have to vote for infrastructure, for the things that we need in our community. So don't let these people cloud your vision or confuse you by having you vote on the issues of abortion or gay marriage. The same, and I'm going to call them the haters, okay? the haters, the people that are anti-women's rights, reproductive rights, the ones that are anti-gay, they're the same ones that are anti-immigrant, okay? They're the same ones that are trying to suppress the vote in many of the southern states or other states of the United States, and in the Central Valley, where I come from, Bakersfield, California, trying to suppress the vote of people of color. So we've got to really understand where we stand and what we have to do, okay? They're also the same ones that are against trying to do something about global warming. They want more oil, you know, they want more pollution. And this is the stuff that we've got to fight against. And right now, 2022, we're in a very critical moment. And guess who can be the decider in the elections? Latinos. And because of our numbers that we have now in many states, even places like North Carolina, there's 400,000 Latinos in North Carolina. Who knew, okay? So it's not only the Southwest here, but in these other states we can make a difference. So I'm going to ask you, I know California, we're in pretty good shape with our senators that we have and some of our congressmen, but a lot of us have relatives in Texas. Texas is really crazy at this point, okay? They're criminalizing women, they're criminalizing doctors, you know, they're trying to keep people from voting. So if you have relatives in Texas, tell them, please go out there, register to vote and get your family to also help you, because otherwise we're not going to win this battle. Because right now, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for the democracy of the United States of America. During World War II, many people went to war to fight Hitler. and to fight the Nazis and to fight fascism. Well, that's what we have right now in the United States of America. We have fascism that has been kind of creeping up on us, and then it manifested itself on January the 6th when we saw the attack on our capital of the United States of America. It's here, it's alive, and it's well, and we are the ones that are going to have to defeat it. You know, during World War II, you know, my dad and my brothers, they were in the Navy during World War II, and so they went out there to fight the fascism. So right now we don't have to go to war physically, but we have to make sure that we do the democracy work, and the democracy work is voting. The democracy work is voting. And a lot of times, a lot of people think, and maybe people that you know, they don't think, that's not for me. Leave it up to the politicians, leave it up to somebody else. No, at this critical moment that we have in the United States of America, all of us have got to go to war against fascism. And the way that we do it is just by voting. It's that simple. And we have to tell people, no, you are important, your voice is important, your vote is important, and we need you to engage right now in this war that is being waged against us. This is a war against us, okay? So that our voices will not be heard. You know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that the ballot is more powerful than the bullet. So this is a nonviolent way. And we can say to people, look, you know, the way our system works, democracy works, it's like a football game. If one team shows up and the other one doesn't, who's going to win? The team that shows up, right? So we've got to be on the winning team. We have to show up. And by the way, I just wanted to tell you, Dr. Sanchez, that the movement that Cesar and I were engaged in actually started before the United Farm Workers. There was an organization called the Community Service Organization, and we even had a chapter here in San Diego. And we did exactly that. We registered voters. And I was here living in Logan Heights, everybody. And we registered 16,000 voters, okay? And we were able to kick out one of the hater guys and bring in somebody that was more in tune with our community in that election. And he had been there for many, many years, and we were able to kick him out because we got all the Latinos to register to vote, and we made history. And I think that seat has been in the hands of the progressives ever since, and I'm going to call them Democrats, okay? Democrats. So, and we did that just by getting people registered to vote, and we made that happen. And that organization, it's CSO, Community Service Organization. We actually passed laws in Sacramento that you could get your driver's license in Spanish. This was back in 1963, that you could vote in the Spanish language. And then we passed another important law that I'm sure many people all over the United States now benefit from this law. That if you were a legal immigrant to the United States, if you had your green card, that you could get public assistance, aid to the blind, aid to the aged. If you were disabled, you could get public assistance, and aid to needy children. We passed all of those laws way back in 1963. And so we brought that legacy of voting, and that's where Cesar Chavez and I first met in that organization. He was in San Jose. At that point, I lived in Stockton. But then we tried to get the CSO to support us to start United Farm Workers, but they wouldn't, so we left. Both Cesar and I and his wife Helen, we all left that organization, and we started the United Farm Workers. And of course, United Farm Workers, we were able to pass unemployment insurance for farm workers. We also got the right to have a union, and a really, really big one, and I know there's people here that have benefited from that law, the Amnesty Bill of 1986. So we got millions of people legalized. And a lot of people Ronald Reagan kind of took the credit for that, but it was not Reagan, it was Senator Ted Kennedy. You know, may he rest in peace. Ted Kennedy, Schumer, who is now in charge of the Senate, and a congressman from California named Howard Berman, and a congressman from New Jersey named Peter Bodino. They're the ones that we were able to get that bill. And I was in Washington for 4 months working on that bill, and we got it passed, okay? So, if you know people, if you know people that got their legalization from that bill, tell them it was Ted Kennedy, okay, primarily that helped us pass that bill, okay? Not Ronald Reagan, okay? Just to set the record straight. So, okay, well, I guess I've talked a lot now. Maybe we can have people who want to ask questions. Okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes, I do.
Who's going to join me? And we'll start with the first question. We have a question from Molly Brown, age 10. Her question is, who in your life inspired you?
Well, I had a couple of people. My mother, number one, because my mother told me, when you see people that need help, you have to help them even if they don't ask you. The other thing she said, never take any money or any praise or any credit for what you do. I kind of changed that one because I think women, we need to take credit, right? But basically, she was saying when you're trying to help, when you have to help people, you do it because they need help, not because you're trying to get any self-aggrandizement from it, you know. And then my Girl Scout teacher, I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life, from the time I was 8 to the time I was 18 years old. And then, of course, the man who taught us how to organize, Caesar and myself, his name was Fred Ross Sr. He was an Anglo. So an Anglo was the person responsible for the Chicano movement. How about that?
Just want to remind you that you can click the QR code and type in your question, and we'll be able to get it for you.
Hello. Second question is, what advice would you give someone looking to do community-based work?
Well, the main thing is that you have to know that you can't do it by yourself. You know, you have to get other people to help. And the way that we organize, to this day with my foundation, and the way we organize in the union and in the CSO is by having house meetings. If I say the word Tupperware or jewelry parties, you know, where you meet in people's homes and you talk about the issues, but then you talk about how we can solve the issues, but then we say to people, then you have to commit to do this. Because unless people commit to work on the issues, it's not going to happen. So this is the way that we organize, and I'll give you a little example. In Bakersfield, we were having a big issue with the push-outs and the expulsions of our Latino and Black students. So we did a whole series of house meetings. We had about 155 parents that we organized, and then we got their complaints of what was happening in the school. Bakersfield City, the Kern County High School District, Kern High School District had expelled 2,500 Black and brown students in 1 year. In 1 year. So we got the information from them, then we sued the high school, and we won, okay? So from 2,500 expulsions, now it's down to like 21. That's the difference, okay? And they have to start putting positive behavior intervention systems. They have to have a Black History Month. They have to have a Latino Heritage Month also to start breaking down the racism down there. Bakersfield is like Bakersfield, Alabama. But the parents are the ones that have to do the work. That's the main thing. And that's the way that we organize, the way that we did the Farm Workers Union. You know, before the strike in Delano, we organized for 3 years. People don't know that. We had to meet in people's homes so that the farm workers could get rid of the fear that they had, and that they had to understand that if they did not go out on strike, if they did not go out on the boycott, then nothing was ever going to change. We have to always remember that. So a lot of times people use the word advocacy, and it's great that we want to advocate for people, but the main thing we want to do is get people to advocate for themselves, okay? That they have the power.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One more question. Our next question is, what advice would you give young Chicanas, and how can we make our voice heard?
Well, I want to say to all the women out there that our voices are really important and really needed. Because we as women, we have a special gift. I think some men have it also, and that's intuition. You know, we know when something isn't right, and sometimes we can't even put words to it, right? It's a feeling that we get. And sometimes we hold our voices because we're afraid that we're going to get criticized. So that's another piece of advice that my mother gave me. She said, when people criticize you, as long as you know you're doing the right thing, ignore them. As they say in Spanish, tíralos a locos, right? Pretend that they're kind of crazy. And just, keep your eye on your goal, on what you want, and just, have faith in yourself. Have faith in your own power and in your own voice. And, Coretta Scott King said that we will never have peace in the world until women take power. Think about that. I kind of changed it with Coretta's permission to say that we will never have peace in the world until feminists take power, okay? And there's a difference there, because we know not all women are progressive, not all women are feminists, and we have a bunch of men, like the guys in this room, that are feminists, okay? So we want to include them also. And
Dr. Sanchez has a question.
can I just add one more thing to that? So, and think about this too. Wherever people are making a decision, they have people in a boardroom or wherever they're having these meetings, unless we have 50% of the people at that table that are feminists, they're going to make the wrong decision, okay? Just remember that. So think about that when you go somewhere and you look up at the dais, and if they don't have 50% of the people up there that are feminists, go up to them and say, hey, there's something wrong with this picture, okay? There's something wrong with this picture. We need to have 50% of the people there to be feminists so that we can really make the world a better place.
Dolores, you talked about unity work, and I know historically you, Cesar Chavez, people like Fred Hampton, Dr. Martin Luther King, anyone who's done unity work has had FBI files the size of encyclopedias. Fred Hampton, really those leaders that wanted to bring communities together because they realized that there was strength in the movements being able to come together. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like when Cesar was in the Salinas, California jail, and when Coretta Scott King came and talked to him, what that conversation was like, and because I think it's powerful.
Well, kind of the unity work actually started, I mentioned this bill that we passed so that the people who were not citizens, but they had the green card, that they could get public assistance. That was in CSO. Yeah. And so in order to be able to pass that bill, we had to get a coalition of organizations. And we found out that there were people from different countries, who also had, who were, again, they were immigrants, especially the older people, because at that point in time, they didn't make it very easy for people to become citizens. So we had to form these coalitions. So we were kind of already used to working with coalitions. And then, of course, when we went out on strike, and it was really interesting, when the farm workers went out on strike, and the strike, by the way, it was not just Latinos. We had Filipinos, Larry Idleong was one of the leaders there, Brother Pete Velasco. We had Puerto Ricans, a lot of Puerto Ricans. Any Puerto Ricans in the house? Mm-hmm. All right. And the Puerto Ricans, by the way, they taught us how to picket, because we would go out there to have one person in a big old field, and then, of course, the growers started shooting people, and they started running people down with their cars and beating people up. And the Puerto Ricans said, that isn't the way you do it. You gotta all come together like in a caravana, in a car caravan, and have a lot of people go together, so that we can get the strikebreakers to come out. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of Okies also, that were also farm workers, and black people also. So in the union, a lot of the pictures that you see are of Latinos and Filipinos, but we had really a mixed group. So we were always worked in coalition. And then, of course, when we went out on the boycott, and we never would have won if we would not have had the whole American public to support us. So there were 17 million Americans that didn't eat grapes. Can you imagine that? 17 million Americans that didn't eat grapes. So, yeah, and that's what brought the growers to the table. Had it not been for the boycott, we never would have won. because we couldn't win with the strike because we're so close to Mexico, they could bring in strike breakers, and then we'd have to get them out of the fields, and then next day there would be more, you know? And so we won with the boycott. And by the way, the Jewish people were in the forefront. In fact, the rabbis and the Jewish religion, they supported us before the Catholics. Because a lot of the growers in Delano, they had relatives that were Catholics. They had priests, and it took us a while to get the. There were some Catholic priests that were right there with us at the beginning, but the Catholic Church, in fact, the Protestants supported us before the Catholics did. You know. So yeah, we always had to work in coalitions. That's always really important to do that we work in coalitions. You know, and because that's the way that we win. And in fact, when you think about the electorate, when you think that people of color, feminist women, okay? And I call it, say, white men of conscience, okay? We're the majority. But we just got to get everybody out to vote, and then we can win.
Thank you.
Okay. What is your take on EZLN fighting for liberation in Mexico from corruption?
What was that again?
What is your take on EZLN fighting for liberation?
Who is that? Oh, the Zapatistas. Wow. Yeah, well, we know that Mexico has a lot of resources, and unfortunately, even though we're so close to Mexico, I mean, I have to say this even for myself. I come from New Mexico, and my family goes back 14 generations. I mean, my grandparents were born in New Mexico, and my great-grandparents on my mother's side. Oh, my great-great-great-great. 14 generations, so we go way back there. And I think that we do not do enough, I think, with Mexico. And I don't know that they want us to do anything, actually, with them, to begin with. But we know that Mexico has a lot of resources, and they do have a democracy. And by the way, Mexico just came out supporting women's right to abortion, okay? So they're ahead of the United States on that issue. But, and I also know that they're kind of in a quandary because we're trying to, thinking about global warming, but we know that Mexico has a lot of oil, and that's the way that they're trying to erase the poverty. So I guess the main thing is if somehow in Mexico they could fight the corruption, and stop the violence in Mexico, maybe the kind of organizing that we do by house meetings so that people are not afraid to have a voice. But I think that, I don't know, I know that I always compare Mexico with Israel. You know that the Jewish people here in the United States, they do a lot to support Israel, okay? And when we think of what can we do as Mexican Americans or Mexican descendants, what can we do to support Mexico? I think we're still waiting for them to tell us what we can do, because otherwise I think we would be interfering, right? Maybe people, that would be a good topic to have a good roundtable on, no? Because who knows, right here in the audience, people might come up with some really good ideas.
Okay.
But I think that the Zapatista movement is very important because they are fighting for the indigenous people. And these are the people that need to have more of a voice in Mexican politics, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Who inspired you along the way, and what advice would you give your younger self? Sorry.
Well, I think I mentioned a lot of the people that inspired me. My mother, my Girl Scout leader, Mr. Ross, and of course Cesar Chavez inspired me also. The advice to my younger self, well, I grew up in the 50s, because I'm 92 years old, everybody. Is that I grew up with racism like a lot of us here did, and at that point in time, you didn't really know that you could do anything about it, and it wasn't until the 60s, right, that came around, and when I met Mr. Ross, in the 50s, taught us how to organize. I think I just wish we would have known sooner, that we could do that. And because I had a feminist mother, I also knew that women's leadership was very important. Advice to my younger self, and I've thought about that, and I could never come up with a good answer. I can never come up. I think I was very blessed, again, to have a mother that was very understanding. My two brothers, by the way, I call my mother equal opportunity mother, because my brothers they had to make the beds and wash the dishes and mop the floors and cook, okay? So I never had to serve a plate to my brothers or ever iron their clothes. In fact, they cook better than I can. So, I mean, I think that was just really important. I think in all women, we need to say to all of our nephews, our brothers, and tell all the Latina mothers out there, the biggest gift that you can give your sons is to teach them how to take care of themselves. Because women these days are not going to do it, okay? And I think I want to make a comment on that too, because they're talking a lot about people organizing into labor unions. And when you think about slavery and how that has affected the way that we think and the way that we act, and the fact that people have to give up their life's energy to make other people rich, really? You know, that's why we have labor unions, so that people, can fight for better wages and better working conditions. But that also affects women, that somehow women are supposed to give up their lives to take care of men or other people instead of taking care of themselves, okay? So we have to change that narrative. We have to change that mentality so that women can not take care of themselves, but also they don't have to be servants to men or to their families. And I know when I say that, that's a big one in Latino families.
Can you talk about the time you spent with Coretta Scott King and the importance of support across communities to create change?
Well, I think I talked about that already, about house meetings, why it's important, because basically the work that we have to do, we have to organize other people to do it. I like to say even Jesus Christ, who could do miracles, that he needed the 12 disciples to help him. So we think about that we have to continue to invite other people to come and to join the movement. Because a lot of people, like I said before, they just don't think that they matter or that they can make a difference. And in our organizing work, I'm going to give you another little example. Because the pollution is so bad in Kern County, because that's where we get 60% of the oil over California. And in one of the schools, a town called Weed Patch, there south of Bakersfield, the students couldn't go out for recess because the air was so polluted, and they would have to stay in the classroom all day long. And so once we organized the parents through house meeting, they decided to pass a petition and pass a bond issue to get a brand new gymnasium at their school. So they did. They got it. They have a state-of-the-art gymnasium there in Weed Patch. But then one of the organizers, one of the women, one of the parents, she decided to run for the school board, and she got herself elected. They all got together. They campaigned, and the principal of the school there wanted to get rid of the breakfast program for the farm worker kids. Well, she said no way. So they got rid of the principal and they kept the breakfast program. And then she got herself elected to the water board in another town called Lamont. Anybody know where Lamont is at? Yeah, some people know Lamont. That's where Marcos Reyes is from. He plays with war. Anyway, so she got herself elected to the Lamont Water District. Investigated, found out there was $250,000 missing. So she called in the grand jury, and they went after the persons that money kind of disappeared, but they went after the person that got the money. So I mean, that was one woman, immigrant, speaks very broken English, makes sure all the meetings are translated into Spanish, and that one woman that came out of our organizing did all of that work. And then and I could go on and on and on, because we have chapters, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we have chapters in the high desert, the Antelope Valley, in Kern County, Tulare County, and Fresno. And every one of these, once we organize the people, then they go after the issues that they're fighting for. In Fresno, a lot of people, a little town called Parlier, a lot of people there were getting ripped off by these solar contractors. Well, we just got a law passed last legislature, $5 million in restitution for those families that were kind of ripped off by these solar contractors that were kind of crooked, you might say, but they're going to be able to get some money back for the losses that they had on their homes. So, but the people did this themselves, and that's the exciting thing about organizing people at the grassroots level. Another town, they have street lights and sidewalks and gutters and neighborhood parks that they've been able to put in, that have been they brought into their community once they got organized, and swimming pools. Yeah. So.
You said you said never take credit for something that you haven't done. How do you handle those that do? What advice do you give?
Well, I embarrassed one of our board members of the United Farm Workers because he gave a beautiful speech about the work that we had done in New York City, but he had never been in New York, okay? And so after he spoke, luckily I spoke after him, and then I said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Martinez, but everything that you said was my work, okay?" He was not very happy about it, and he complained to me afterwards, "Why did you embarrass me?" I said, "Well, why did you take credit for my work?" Okay? I mean, and I think that we have to do that. And the same thing, I think, when we see people that they make sexist remarks or homophobic remarks or racist remarks, we have to call them on it, okay? Sometimes you have to do it publicly, depending on who the person is, and sometimes you have to do it privately and just say, that chiste colorado that you just made is very offensive to women, or that homophobic remark that you just made is very offensive to me and to all of our people who are gay or lesbians, or transgender. So that's part of, when I say we have to be messengers of peace, okay? And we have to be messengers of peace and messengers of justice. And don't wait for somebody to bring up the conversation. We can initiate the conversation. I want to tell you something about Benito Juarez, okay? This is what he said, so that we can start erasing all that homophobia, the misogyny, the sexism that exists in our community. We can do it. There's a quote that, I made a quote one time and they made a big thing about it, but that all of us can be organizers. Every minute when we're talking to somebody, we can be an organizer. Talk to them about democracy, why it's important for them to get involved. Talk to them about how we can erase the hatred. And we don't want to join the haters, okay? We're a different group here. But all of us can do this. We can all be organizers to make people understand why we need them to be involved and why we need them to help us erase all of the illnesses that we have of sexism and homophobia, and misogyny. We can make it happen.
Thank you. We have one more question. How do you recommend getting started and getting into the community of civil rights and activism, especially for women's rights?
Well, we have to just take that first step. If you already have an organization, and if you don't, maybe you can start one. And just like I said before, just start with your friends and your neighbors having these meetings in their homes. And the procedure that we use, we do the meetings and then we bring everybody together. And then we ask them if they want to join the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and they have to do a standing vote. We make people stand up and say that they want to join the organization. And then what we do is we break people up into groups, and we have a big general meeting, and then people break up into groups, and then they make a list of all of the issues that they have in their community, but then they have to vote, and they're going to take one or two issues that they want to address in their community. And then we do a planning meeting. The next meeting, we make a plan. And once we make a plan of what we have to do to achieve our goal, and then they have to volunteer to do the work. Okay? And that's where the magic happens. Because once they volunteer to do the work, then that's how their leadership grows. And many of them have never been to a city council meeting or a school board meeting, supervisors meeting, wherever they have to go to that agency to make happen what they want to happen. But they have to do the work. We don't do the work for them. They have to do the work. And it's really miraculous to see that people never realized that they had that power to make things happen. But it's quite simple. If people want to know how to organize, we actually are doing an organizing account. Now that the pandemic is kind of over, still not quite over, but we're going to be doing training to teach people how to organize, because we want to be able to for more people to learn how to. It's simple, but it takes time. And when people talk to people sometimes that they don't know, that's why we say to everybody, I want you guys to get involved in the elections. You have some good people running for office. Volunteer to go out there and knock on doors, okay? Canvassing. When you do that, you're talking to strangers, people that you don't know. You're trying to convince them to make them understand that they're part of this mission of democracy, this movement of democracy. When you talk to people that you don't know, your emotional fortitude gets stronger, okay? Because you're talking to people that you don't know, you're trying to convince them. And that way you become stronger, then you can become an activist, become an organizer. If you're not ready to go out knocking on doors, do some phone banking. Volunteer for one of these campaigns and call people on the telephone and tell them why it's important for them to vote, you know. And there's some good propositions that are going to be on the ballot in November also. So we know that right now, people are going to get their ballots next week. They're going to, because everybody's going to do mail-in ballots in California. And, you know, so think about some candidate that you want to volunteer for. And the candidates will love it because they never have enough money. And eventually, by the way, someday we have to take the money out of politics and have the taxpayers pay for the elections so that some of you can run for office, that you don't have to be a millionaire. That's one of the other things that we have to do. And I also want to leave you with this. There was a Spanish philosopher named Jose Ortega y Gasset in Spain before the dictator Franco took over. And he wrote a book called The Revolution of the Masses. And the thesis of his book, it's only a small book, it's only 100 pages. And this is the thesis of his book. If you do not have an educated citizenry, then the greedy and the powerful and the corrupt, they will rule, okay? The greedy and the powerful will rule if we do not have an educated citizenry. So that's why it's so important that we stay informed, because that's kind of where we're at right now in the United States of America. You have these these billionaires, like we all know about, what's his name, Musk buying Twitter, right? You know, that's going to influence everything that happens in our United States of America. So that's why it's so important that we, the people, you know, that we have the power and not have the millionaires and the billionaires have the power over our lives, the way that we think, and the way that we act.
Thank you. Dr. Sanchez, do you have anything else to add, or Sonia?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Sanchez.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Dolores, when I was in college, there was no mecha. But the group that I associated with and I connected with was SDS, Students
Oh,
for
yeah.
Democratic Society. Did you ever have interactions with them?
Yeah, Students for Democratic Society, yes. I did actually know that organization, and it was an important organization at that time in the 60s, you know, to again bring progressive thoughts into the student movement, very definitely. SDS, Students for Democratic Society, I do remember them. And METRA, by the way, was started after the farm worker movement. It kind of grew out of the farm worker movement. So, and before they had the walkouts in the schools in Los Angeles and in other places, they did that because of the farm worker movement, because a lot of students would come to picket in Delano, and they got their inspiration from the farm worker movement. So, yeah, the student movement is very, very important, which means that all of you are very, very important, okay, to make this happen. And if we're going to end, I want to end with a chant. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So can we all stand up? Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, okay? And I know you know the answers. And the first question that I'm going to ask you who has the power? And I want you to say, we have the power, okay? Second question is, what kind of power? We're going to say people power, all right? But I want you to shout it really, really loud, as if you really believe it, okay? So let's go. Who's got the power? We have the power. Okay, let's do that one more time. That was still, some people are not sure. Okay. One more time, okay? Who's got the power?
We got the power.
What kind of power?
People power.
Are we going to use our power? What do we say? So that we can stop the fascism, so we can save our democracy, so we can save our community. What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede?
Sí se puede.
¿Se puede o no se puede?
Sí se puede.
¿Se puede o no se puede?
Sí se puede.
Okay, let's do the clap. Okay, let's go. Sí se puede. Thank you.
Sí se puede. And just for our quick closing remarks, my fellow machista has something to present.
So, as we wrap up this memorable evening, we want to reiterate that we're a community. Community inspires us and fuels us as Southwestern students and machistas. Without a strong sense of community, we cannot take action. Within our community, representation matters, especially to foster a strong sense of belonging. Representation needs to be present in what we read, see, learn, and can only be achieved with active participation from us students and different organizations within our community college. We also recognize that participation is key. We want to highlight members of our community whose efforts made this event possible. It's been an honor witnessing our speakers deliver their messages that inspire us to mold our community to address the needs of our generation and the ones to come. We want to thank the Performing Arts Center staff, Lillian Leopold and Brenda Mora, for their aid this morning during just how hectic it was. We also want to thank volunteers Cameron and Vivian as they laid the foundation for the success of this event. Without their support and hard work, this dream would have not have materialized. We thank you to our machistas and anyone who has endorsed the 10-point plan. Your commitment to this community inspires us every day to reach our goals of a Chicanx Students Department and a curriculum and faculty that understands and represents our community values. So, this experience will remain in our hearts for a lifetime, just like the efforts of our community members that make our neighborhoods better. Like the legendary Chicano Park muralist and 2021 Southwestern College honorary degree recipient, Salvador Vargas. Someone who took a stand against oppression as families were driven out of their homes. He was one of the brave community members who decided to immortalize our culture and inspire generations to come. As students, we thank you. We also thank you for our banner, which immortalized this day and will remain with us and next generations to never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. Empathy is also an intriguing component of our community. For that, we want to thank the founder of Border Angels and current director of Puentes Latinos, Dr. Enrique Morones, for his passionate work and advocacy for immigration and highlight the injustices against Latinos who face discrimination in this country.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your work has enabled us to dream and pursue careers to better our community, turn it into a welcoming environment for whoever needs it.
Hi, Enrique, how are you?
It's great to see you once again.
Good to
Mucho
see you
gusto
too.
de
Thank
verte de
you, thank
nuevo.
you. Nice to see you
Tú
too.
conoces muy bien a Salvador.
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Tenemos un mural
Oh, wow.
que esto es una copia del mural que la pintó Salvador. Salvador, like many other times, has painted a beautiful mural, and this is dedicated to you, of course. Better pay, better salary for teachers. Si se puede vote. Here's the beautiful Southwestern College logo. Women's Rights. Mecha.
All right.
And Mecha for putting this event together, the UFW and Gente Unida. Te queremos
beautiful-
mucho.
that's a
Te
beautiful-
queremos mucho, Dolores.
Thank you.
Eres una persona que es una santa. Estamos muy agradecidos que nos estás visitando y esto es para ti.
Oh, thank you,
Muchas
Enrique.
gracias,
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Enrique.
Put them right there for a photo. There you go.
Te podemos enseñar, allá está, mira,
La bolsa.
el mural, allá está.
Oh, okay.
Ahí está el mural, sí está doblado.
Te lo
después.
podemos enseñar más tarde.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias, señor Salvador. Muchas
De
gracias.
nada.
Thank you very much for the beautiful mural. And I
gracias,
think they have it over there folded up. Oh, they're going to throw it down. Wow. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you very much. That's very beautiful. I just want to say, too, that, you know, Southwestern College is one of the places that I've spoken at over the years. And I just would love to see how beautiful it has become and that they were able to invest in you, okay, in this community because you are so deserving. So anyway, I'm just really happy to be here and to see all of how wonderful this community college has become. It's really wonderful. Thank you again for having me very much. Muchas gracias.
You want to see the last part?
No, I can't see the last part. I'm good.
Gracias, gracias.
A usted. Muchas gracias.
Que
Thank you.
viva unos 20 años más.
Ojalá. God willing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Should I get my stuff? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Did you want me to bring the reporter back now?